Before we start this week's podcast, a huge shout out to our sponsors, UWE Bristol, who have recently teamed up with Amazon to create Alexa's first university prospectus. So if you're considering your university options, you can just ask Alexa to open UWE Guide to discover what they offer, all tailored to suit your individual needs and interests.
This is the Bristol Flyers Podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the Bristol Flyers Podcast, presented by UWE Bristol, with me, your host, Joel Osborne. We're on a roll. Back-to-back weeks of releasing a podcast episode. I'm going to hate myself for saying this, but we're going to try and release an episode every week now for the rest of the season. So make sure you hit subscribe via your usual podcast provider. And please give us a 5-star rating and review as well, because it really does a lot in terms of helping us out. Coming up this week, we speak to Justin Baker, who's been with the Flyers for just over a month now, as we learn more about his professional career. We talk a bit about agents. We talk about his journey through playing professionally, which has seen him play all over Europe and Australia as well. We talk about linking up with Josh Wilcher, linking up with Jamel Anderson of the Leicester Riders as well. And we have a bit of fun at the end. We chat a bit about British slang. So there's a good little segment there at the end for you. But without further ado, let's get straight to it. It's episode 6 with Justin Baker.
This is the Bristol Flyers Podcast.
All right, time to welcome in this week's guest on the Bristol Flyers Podcast, and it's Justin Baker. Justin, how's it going? Welcome to the podcast.
It's going great, man. Happy to be here.
How have you settled into life in Bristol so far? You've been here for, what, just over a month now?
Yeah. I feel like I'm settling in, man. Just unfortunately, under the circumstances that we're under, I can't really do a whole lot. I can't really take advantage of whatever Bristol has to offer. So, but I'm settling in, man. I like it.
Yeah, I guess there's not really too much you can do at the moment with the whole lockdown thing. As I promise, Bristol's a lot better than what you're experiencing right now. But how have you managed to deal with all the extra time at home and stuff? Have you managed to pick up any new hobbies or any new things on the side alongside basketball?
Yeah, I mean, I think I just I've always been somewhat of a homebody. So, the Netflix and things of that nature, they're still entertaining to me. I know some people are burned out on streaming shows and whatnot. But that's definitely one of my go-tos for sure. I try to read a little bit more. You know what? I feel like it's good to try to do things that actually make you better. When you have all this downtime instead of just, consuming all this just random content just for entertainment's sake. That's cool and all, but I feel like you should have a balance. So I try to do different things. I've gone very, very lightly into meditation. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm some enlightened spiritual being or nothing like that, but I've tried a couple of meditation sessions. I just fall asleep pretty much. So.
Is that the Headspace app? Have you seen the Headspace app?
I've seen that one. I haven't used it. I have this yoga app, and part of it, I guess a leg that they have of it is they have these little guided meditation things. So they have them in little 4-minute, 5-minute spurts, and it's just this really soft voice that's listen to me and breathe and blah blah. And I just do that before I go to bed. And
you don't reckon you could do that on the side, be a meditation voice?
Man, listen, I've been told on more than one occasion I have a voice similar to Barry White. So, I might have a future in that.
There you go. You've had so many experiences of playing overseas, internationally, all over the world. But I think at the start of the season, you probably didn't imagine that you'd be playing basketball in a global pandemic. What's that whole experience been like in terms of playing during this whole COVID situation without any fans and everything like that?
Yeah, it's weird, man. I think when the season first started, I didn't really have a situation to play in at the time when everything was first getting kicked off. So for me, it was interesting hearing from different people who I know who were on teams and seeing preseason games and all that type of stuff, just seeing how it actually was and hearing about it. And I think probably from the outside looking in, I was I played games for some clubs where, we just didn't have a good fan turnout. So playing in an empty arena, empty venue wouldn't really be much to me. But at the same time, it's different when the free will is not there, the will to come and go. Because you might play for a team who, has a 3,000 seat capacity and only 200 people show up, right? But then depending on who you play, you might play – it might just be a marquee matchup. It might be a derby. And in that game, there's going to be 3,000 seats filled. Whereas, we played our derby. What was that against Plymouth, right?
Yeah.
There's nobody in there. And that was on TV. That was on, I think, national TV, right?
Yeah.
So you still have that that part of it is still there in terms of like playing on in front of the cameras and all the impact in terms of what everything means when you're playing the games is all still there. But not having the fans is a huge thing. I actually know people that flat out can't make that adjustment. They can still play, but it's just something that they just can't wrap their heads around. So for me, it's a little strange. Like that vibe, you just come to the stadium and it's almost like you can hear the crowd before they even there. You know what I mean? Like you don't have that energy anymore. You don't have, you play home. And I've heard the home games here are insane.
Incredible.
Yeah. When you make a big shot or even you just make a regular uneventful layup and you got that crowd behind you, it feels like instead of 2 points, it was 10 points. That's why, there's some people who have that theory where it's like you go on the road, that team is already up 10, just for the simple fact that they have so much momentum from their home venue where they're comfortable. They got the whole entire town behind them. Not having that is it's awkward, but that's just the pandemic for you, man. It is what it is. We got to adjust and keep it moving. So
talk us through like some of the the protocols that you guys are having to do at the moment, because we do it as well as staff, but obviously we're testing every week and mask wearing and whatnot. Just talk us through like what a standard game day looks like for you guys in terms of all the protocols you have to follow.
Yeah, man. Well, you got the standard, wear your mask everywhere. That's obviously everywhere. But we have a responsibility to make sure that we're really being diligent about honoring the different codes and whatnot, because it's like if one of us gets the virus, it slows the entire show down for who knows how long. Because the chances are, let's say I get it, chances are if I have it, probably everybody in my house is gonna get it. And I'm in here practicing, trading sweat and all that type of stuff with the rest of the guys. Somebody else probably gonna get it. So the number one thing is just really having that individual responsibility and accountability and just making sure that you're doing what you need to do so that way you don't interrupt things. That's the number one thing, really. Apart from that, yeah, we've got the COVID testing that we do every Wednesday. I think that's like a league standard thing now. On the bench, we have the social distancing, which is super weird, right? And I was going back to the whole thing about momentum. People don't realize that momentum and that energy that's created in the games oftentimes comes from the proximity that you are with your teammates on the court and off the court. But now somebody makes a big basket or there's an exciting play, you got to reach all the way over here to slap five. I think you're probably encouraged not to, right? You got to wear your mask on the bench. That's super weird. The timeouts, there's like a different timeout section. Yeah, you got to like go on a mission just to get to a timeout. And in the timeout, you don't have that closed off like group, just close proximity. You're all spread out, and that feels weird. So yeah, it's just a little, these little different quirky things, man, that we just have to try to implement because you got to try to stop any spread. So, but again, it's like I said, that's just been the nature of the pandemic. You got to just make the adjustments and keep it moving.
Well, fingers crossed we haven't got to do it for too much longer with everything sort of slowly starting to get back to some kind of normality again. I just kind of like the whole point of this podcast is basically so fans can learn about you. So we want to learn about like your career journey, how it all started, because you've played at so many clubs. So forgive me if I've like missed out some teams here, but I've got like Denmark, Israel, Finland, Sweden, Greece, Cyprus, Romania, Australia, Qatar. What's been your favorite country, would you say, that you've played in?
The club environment probably was in terms of like game day atmosphere.
Yeah, I guess that. And I guess in terms of like how well the clubs run and like how well they treat their players and everything like that as well.
Yeah, so I would say in terms of the game day atmosphere, when just like the fans are going crazy and just like the how important the game is like to society, was Cyprus. When I played for Apoel, they have like their own songs and they sing these songs during the game in full concert with like, and it's like got a little choreography to it. It's giant flags like the size of this wall that's being waved around. And then there's like this constant like roar. And in Cyprus, they smoke cigarettes like inside. I don't think you're supposed to, but it's not really well regulated, at least when I was there. And so then there'll be like this big, thick layer of smoke, which is kind of a gross situation to play in, but it just goes to show you how many people were in there. You could not hear yourself think. And these guys, like, let's say we were winning, and it was a few minutes left in the game. It was like tradition. They would actually light a torch like a real live torch. And it's thousands of people. And they'll just be like waving them around in the crowds. It's just so sick, man. And they'll throw them on the court. One time they threw them on the court. I should have kept it, but I had one of them I stepped on because we're playing a game. So the torch is coming on the court, and I step on one of them, and it nearly blew up on my shoe. I had like this big black streak on my shoe. I couldn't use it anymore. I had to throw it away. So yeah, for that type of thing, I would say Cypress. I mean, they used to have like 50 riot police outside with the shields and the helmets on, and it was crazy, man. In terms of playing and things just being like organized, and you don't really have to worry about anything beyond just doing your job. Definitely the ones in Western Europe. I would probably say Finland. Finland was really good for that. Like they were really, really organized. And this was the entire league, not just the club I played for, but the entire league was just ran in this way that was just so, so professional. And you don't realize it until you don't have it anymore. Like when you go to a place, I don't want to put down the League of Cyprus or other leagues, but there are some clubs that don't operate like that. Like it's like a decision not to operate with that high level of integrity and professionalism. So when you do have it, man, it's great. Like when you get your contractual obligations are given to you on time and as written in the contract. You have a decent living situation. You have a reliable means of transportation. Even if they give you a bike, like when I played in Finland, it's freezing. I was like way at the top of the country, and I think the name of the town was weird to say. It was like Kauhajoki, I think is how you say it. And it's way, way up northern Finland, small town, nothing there but somehow a basketball club and like, a couple gas stations, grocery stores, and I think a school and like a pub. That was it. And they gave us bikes, and it's freezing up there. They gave us good bikes, right? Like at the time, the owner of that club owned a bike shop. So you get up there, you get a nice brand new bike, they gave us some nice thick gloves to ride our bikes in, nice beanie, nice, winter clothes, make sure, okay, yeah, you're on a bike, but you'll be nice and snug and warm when you ride your bike to and from practice and to and from the spa, so you can have your little ice baths and whatnot, and back and forth to the grocery store and this and that. The way that the league was ran in terms of like having the schedule be set in stone and everything happened as it said it was, and all the games are live streamed or on TV, and all the stats are available, and good media days and all that type of stuff you like as a player, kind of like here, and also just the salary was pretty enjoyable as well. So I really liked Finland for that, for sure. I think that was probably my number one.
Yeah, just sort of taking things backwards a little bit further. You took the junior college route to play professionally basketball, didn't you? Like, how did that all come about in terms of, you play high school and then decide? Did you have like options on the table, or was it? Did you choose that?
Yeah, to a limited extent. I played when I played basketball growing up. I was always pretty good, but I was never like a blue chip guy. Like I was never like that young, future high school All-American. Coach K's calling my mom's phone when I'm like in the 6th grade, and I was never that guy. But I was always decent. I was always bigger than everybody. And then when I got to high school, I more or less was like a late bloomer. Like I didn't really play in the AAU circuit. I played, but I didn't really. I played for more of just like a local club in town. I didn't really play for like the big ones that are sponsored by Adidas. And I don't know if you know much about that type of stuff, but you've heard of Zion Williamson, for example.
Yeah.
Like the AAU team he played for was like one of the biggest ones in the country, and they have all this funding from these shoe companies and whatnot, and that's typically the route you choose, and that's more or less how you get a name for yourself at that age. It's a lot more developed now than it was when I was coming up, but it was still an engine. Like it was still a pretty sizable beast on its own. I think I relied more on success in high school basketball, like actually playing for my school. My dad, he felt like the path to getting a scholarship was to dominate at the high school level. And so once I kind of came into my own as a young player, I had 2 really good years, my junior and senior year in high school. And I got some interest. I had some interest from the university in my city, Sacramento State. I had not a solid offer from them, but I was going back and forth with them about it. The staff actually wound up getting fired, so that kind of fizzled out. A few other schools, I had made a verbal commitment to Oregon State. They were recruiting me pretty heavily. That wound up falling apart. And then what ended up happening was I wound up playing in an AAU tournament after the high school season because I'm still trying to procure a scholarship. And I got a really, really bad ankle sprain. And so that kind of pretty much turned anybody away who was still maybe trying to grab me up as like a late signee. They were like, oh, bad sprain, no thanks. So had to go to JC route for my freshman year in college. But the goal was always just to do 1 year and then transfer. I think a lot of guys who go to JC, they'll just do like their freshman year, then they'll play their sophomore year, then they'll transfer. And oftentimes it's because you have to have there's like a certain educational standard that you have to meet in order to transfer out after your freshman year. And for whatever reason, it's really, really difficult to do that, like to be eligible for a Division I scholarship after your freshman year. Like the academic stuff that you have to do is pretty like advanced compared to what's like the normal custom. But I was always on top of my grades, man. So that wasn't really an issue. And so I had a really good freshman year. And then at that point, my mindset was, okay, I still want to go Div 1. I'm open to Div 2 just because I do want to, play somewhere to get my education paid for. So the first one that comes and makes an offer, that I'm just going to go with that. And I went to this kind of like a exposure camp kind of thing for JC players and high school seniors that one of my high school coaches had put on. And he gets like a bunch of guys, like 200 or so. And, man, you pretty much just play these games in front of all these different coaches. And I played really well, and the coach from Utah Valley was there. And his assistant was a guy who was recruiting me at Sac State. So that staff had a little bit of familiarity with me. They pretty much approached me right away and was like, hey, we like you, we want to sign you. And I was like, cool, let's do it. And that's how I wound up transferring to Utah Valley. So.
And you've spent 3 years there.
Yeah.
I'm right in thinking you won, like, in your senior year, you got 6th man of the year in the Great West Conference. Like,
yeah.
That's quite big. That's a big achievement.
Yeah, it was, man. To be honest, I was a little salty, man, my senior year because I played the 3 years there. I did my sophomore year, came off the bench. I had to get stronger. I had to get used to playing Division I. We had a good team that year. I think we won like 18 games, 19 games my sophomore year. My junior year was a bit of a down year for us. We had a lot of new guys who were kind of young, didn't really have very many seniors. We had some injuries. But individually, I made a huge jump, I feel like. Like I went from averaging like 3 points and a couple of rebounds to I think like 11 points and 6 rebounds. Like I had a pretty good junior year. I was one of the better players in the Great West Conference that year. I was feeling really good about myself. I started that year as well. I was feeling really good about myself. I was really feeling like I was going to build on that junior year. Like my trajectory was going up. Like I was like, because let's face it, everybody's trying to get to the NBA. Regardless of whether you're one of those guys who's on a projected draft board or whatever, you're trying to get to the NBA if pro basketball is your aspiration. And so I was trying to get to the NBA. Didn't get there. But coming into my senior year, I felt like, okay, I had pretty decent numbers my junior year. I'm not on anybody's draft board or anything like that, but I feel like I made some noise. Like I feel like I could build on this. And I really worked my tail off, got in phenomenal shape, got really strong. And then the coach decided to bring me off the bench my senior year. And that was like a gut punch for me. Like I did not handle that well. So like the first 3 or 4 games, I didn't play well at all. I was just in my own feelings. I was in my head. I was angry. But I had to snap out of it in order to make my senior year pay off so that I can be where I am now, right? And so I wound up having a really good senior year, just kind of using my frustration and my anger as like a source of motivation, man. And I was able to turn it around and have a really good year. We won 19 games. We unfortunately got knocked out of our conference tournament, which we hosted. That sucked. We got knocked out in the semifinal. I think we were expected to win that because we won the conference season. I think we went 12-1, 11-1. So we lost 1 game. But we stormed through. We had I think we had the conference MVP. We had like 2 first team all-conference players. We had a guy who was an All-American on our team, a guard. He was amazing. And yeah, I was 6th man of the year. So that was a big accomplishment. It was a good year for us as a school. I think it really helped catapult Utah Valley to where they are now. So
yeah. Was that always? I know you say like you were sight set on the NBA, as with like many, as everyone is when they're playing like college and stuff. But like, what point was it in when you're playing college that you realized that like wait a minute, like that may not be on the cards, but I could probably still play professional basketball somewhere like in Europe or something, for example?
I think for me, man, when playing overseas became an actual like viable option was when I realized I'm probably not going to go to the NBA. So once that happened, I didn't really know exactly how to approach it, like who to even talk to about it. Because college coaches, more or less, at least to my experience, their job is not to help you for what you're planning on doing after in terms of basketball. Like, that's kind of up to you. I think if they decide to help you in whatever way they can, that's more of just like the kindness that they just kind of are just inherently born with. I didn't really get a whole lot of guidance from my college basketball program with regard to getting overseas, which is whatever. I don't hold that against them or anything. Man, this agent just messaged me on Facebook randomly, like in February of my senior year, and was like, "Hey, I'm an agent. You want to play overseas?" I thought it was like some gimmick. You get those weird messages like on Instagram and whatnot from this person who's like in some place you never heard of, like, "Hey, I sell blah blah blah," and it's like, dude, go away. That's how I treated it. And this guy I met later down the road, who played at Weber State in Utah, he wound up signing with his agent and got a job playing in Germany. And at the time, I didn't have a job. So then I was like, maybe I should reach out to this dude. So I reached out to him. He was like, "Yeah, man, I could help you get over here. I've had my eye on you for a while." And long story short, man, he gave me my first contract offer, which got me to Denmark. And then he was my agent for, I think, 4 years before I switched my representation.
Do you guys, like, once you've got your first job offer and you're playing overseas, do you then, like, what makes a player want to change an agent, for example? Is it because of like you're not getting the right jobs, or is it because you want to try and find an agent who can get you into Australia, for example, or what is it that goes behind those decisions?
Man, the thing about that is, it's like the things that you're able to be exposed to is based on like what your perceived value is. So the guy that I was, and remember, I wasn't like some big time All-American. I didn't average 20 points and 9 rebounds. I think my senior year I averaged like 9 points and 7 rebounds, something like that, which isn't bad. I was 6th man of the year. That's pretty much like being first or second team in a conference. You come off the bench, so you're not eligible for that award. But it was definitely nothing to hang your head about, for sure. But the reality is like there's only so many basketball jobs, and that's something that you hear from like the moment you set your sights on playing professional basketball from like the age of 10. One of the first things people start to tell you is, there's only so many jobs out there. Like, not even 1% of the entire population plays professional basketball or any professional sport. And whatever they aspire to, basketball, soccer, rugby, cricket, whatever, like hardly anybody actually makes it happen. So the ones that do make it happen, you're then kind of like put in these boxes based on like what you've done from your prior stints. So the best agencies that represent players overseas, they're going for the ones who were like fringe draft picks, or the guys who they might have been unsigned or undrafted free agents, and they got invited to the Lakers training camp and whatnot, but they didn't wind up making that final roster. Now they're out of a job, and for whatever reason, they don't want to play in the G League because it doesn't pay enough or whatever. That's when FC Barcelona comes and swoops up those guys, and they're represented by huge agencies, huge ones. And like, it's like a well-oiled machine. The guy that reached out to me was just a guy. He was an agent, but he was just like a guy who had his own kind of thing. And there's nothing wrong with that, but he didn't have that engine behind him. You know what I mean? It's like a guy who works for a record label and a guy who's independent. You know what I mean? It's two different kind of things. So it's tough to make those decisions. I think you have to just basically go with how your present experience is going. If everything is good, if you have a good working relationship, if he answers the phone when you need him to, if he feels like he has your back, I think you keep him. But when you're a professional, you also do it for the money. You don't do it just to play. And so, man, when you gotta, when you're faced with those decisions, man, every little time you sign your name and you consider having a guy represent you, it matters, man. It's tough. I don't know how to advise anybody on how to sift through the agency world. You gotta just get lucky.
I can't even imagine like what it would be like, because players' lifespans as professional athletes are short. Like, the careers, you don't see players playing basketball forever. They have to move on once they retire and go on to do something else. So you only have that short window to actually kind of make some money out of playing basketball. I mean, when you like signed your first contract, was it in the back of your mind that you kind of did you want to like travel around and experience different I know some players, they like to do like a year over here and see what that's like, or a year over here and see what the culture's like there and experience the world, or there's some players like to just go to a club and settle into that club and really grow with that team as well. Like what was your mindset going into your rookie year? Did you want to go down the traveling around sort of route, or did you want to stick with a club and help them grow and develop?
Yeah, man, I had no idea, to be honest. I think especially because when I got overseas, the prior year was the lockout year. So after that lockout year, I was really desperate to try to make it happen, because I pretty much spent a year staying in shape, staying ready, but not really making much money, or hardly any money. So I realized, like, okay, I don't know if I could do this for another year. Like, I need to find a way to get overseas and start my career. Otherwise, I got to go a different direction, and basketball's over. It is what it is. It ends for everybody, right? So I was just happy to be, like, when I signed for that, I signed for Verluse in Denmark. I was happy to be there. I hadn't even thought that far ahead about, okay, well, maybe I want to stay here and grow as they grow, because Verluse was, at the time, they were a very small, family-oriented, homegrown club. Like, they didn't have the big sponsor behind them. Everything kind of came from the little community. It's like a very small suburb on the outskirts of Copenhagen. So, I think I just wanted to get there and just kind of, per the advice of my agent, really kind of just show that, hey, like, I'm overseas and I can play this game. Like, I can make the transition from college to professional, from America to Europe, because it is a different brand of basketball. You're in a whole different environment. Like, the way that you have to adjust and you're on a whole different clock. You're playing amongst different culture. You're playing a different style of basketball. Like, you have to make all these different adjustments. So I think I was just very determined to show that I can actually be in this realm, first and foremost, man, before anything, I think.
Yeah. And then you sort of, again, like jumping through the seasons, you jump around a few different teams as well. I think you were saying when we first signed you at Flyers that the highlight of your career was probably out in Australia when you won that championship. What was that like in terms of being out there? I guess first of all, in an English-speaking country, rather than, I imagine all the other countries would have had, a tough language barrier up until that point. And then obviously you go and win that championship. And I think, obviously you say you're on the same team as Josh Wilcher, and I think Jamel Anderson as well, who plays in the BBL for the listeners. So just a bit of like context there. But what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, it was sick, man. That was my fourth time around playing in Australia. And in that league, I played in Queensland. At the time, it was called the QBL. They've rebranded now. I think they've kind of like joined up with the top league out there, the NBL. So like it's like all one big NBL thing. So kind of like an NBA and G League type of thing.
Yeah, I think it's called like the NBL 1 now, isn't it?
NBL 1, yeah. NBL 1 North, I think is what they call the QBL now. So I had played there prior, 3 other teams, and I had played on pretty competitive teams. Like, we had made the playoffs, had good rosters. When I played for a team in Glaston, we got to the championship. We got to the semifinal. I never forget this one. Got to the semifinal on the road against the Brisbane Capitals, and we were up 15 with like 5 minutes left. Wound up choking it away. Went to overtime, and we lost by 1 to advance to the championship. That was a very, very tough one. And then the next year, played for Logan, which is in Brisbane. Same thing, got to the semifinal, lost to the Brisbane Capitals. So then when I got to Townsville, which is the team that me and Wilch and Jamel played on, I was really, really determined to, like, win a championship. And obviously you don't know much about that league, but Townsville always kind of had that. They were always that club that had that really gritty team. Like, they hadn't won a championship in like 20 years, but they just always had like a really tough, physical team. Like, Townsville was never a fun club to play against. Like, you were going to leave that game bruised up. You're going to be exhausted. And so I really wanted to I was excited to be a part of that. When they reached out to me to join them, I was honored. I was like, yeah, man. And the good thing also about Townsville was, unfortunately for them, they had an NBL club. And for whatever reason, the Townsville Crocs is what they were called. They folded. I don't know why, but they folded. And they were like a household name for basketball. But much of those resources got trickled down to the QBL team. So in some ways, it was like you were playing for a high-level professional club. And that was great because technically much of that league tends to operate almost like semi-professional, right? Like some of the domestic players, they're coming home, they're coming from work, they're coming from all these different situations, and they're not able to play like full-time like I was and like how Wilch and Jamel was, right? So I think that kind of makes the league technically semi-pro. We'd only train as a team 4 times a week and you would play games on the weekend. Where normally you're training every day. You're going to have some sort of shooting, team practice, conditioning, weights every day, right? So when I got to Townsville, man, it was very different. There was another team in the league, Cairns, who also had like an NBL, like higher up team. And they were always super competitive because what they would basically do is they would train with their NBL club. So as the QBL season winds down and the NBL season gets ready to start, they're now in NBL training. So they were always like a lot more well-oiled than all the other teams, and they will wind up making deep playoff runs, sometimes win championships in that league, and that's what it was like playing for Townsville. So, yeah, man, winning that championship was great. It was the first time that the club had won a championship in 20 years. So it was very cool to bring that feeling back to the club, and then to go back the next season and repeat and win it again was even sweeter, man. So yeah, that was a good time for sure. That's definitely the highlight, particularly the first one because we weren't expected to win it, and people knew we were going to be good, but there were like 3 other teams that the general people kind of thought, okay, like these are the teams that are going to compete, but we knocked some people off, and then we got to the championship, and we shocked a lot of people. So, yeah, it was great. Me and Wilch were just talking about that the other day, actually.
Yeah. What was your favorite? You got any good memories about playing with Josh out there?
I got good memories with Wilch, man. We always lived right next to each other as well when we were there. So, yeah, man, we would get coffee together. We laugh, we talk. And I think, Wilch is competitive. And I'm competitive. And when we were in Townsville, we really, really wanted to win. Because I told you how I'd been to the semifinal and lost. He had the prior year been to the semifinal, had the game won. For whatever reason, they choked it away with Townsville. Gets to overtime, and they lose. So when we both when I showed up, we were both eager to get over that semifinal hump. And, we were able to do that together. That was great. I think in Jamel's case, I wasn't sure if he had played. I'm not sure if he had played outside of Britain at that point. That might have been his first time. And I know he's won like a bunch of championships with Leicester. So I think for him as an individual, I think he kind of wanted to prove it to himself that he could be a champion elsewhere. He can go somewhere and affect winning elsewhere. So I remember after we won that championship, he was very emotional about it. Like he was brought to tears. He was so happy that he was able to travel to the other side of the world and still be a champion. So that was a dope experience, man. It was really, really cool. We were on the road. It was a super packed out venue. We were playing against Mackay, which is one of the bigger clubs in that league. It was super hostile. It was a best of 3 series, and it was played Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We stole the one on Friday. They blew us out on Saturday, and then the one on Sunday was at like 1 p.m. So it was really 3 games in less than 3 days. And we were exhausted. We were tired. But when we pulled it off, man, it was amazing.
That's awesome. That's such a good memory. What's it been like linking up with Josh Wilcher again this year?
Yeah, man, it's always good to see Wilch, man. I feel like we have great chemistry. Unfortunately, I haven't really been able to really show it up to this point, but that was one of the reasons why I decided to come here, was knowing that he was here. Just because I know what he brings to the table, and just the person he is. Me and Wilch always got along. So yeah, it's great. It's great being able to play with Wilch, man.
Obviously, the end of March, we've got a couple of games against Leicester as well. Have you had a chance to speak to Jamel ahead of those games?
I talk to Jamel all the time. We haven't really talked much about playing against each other. Man, he's a good friend of mine. You know what I realized? When you win a championship, and there's a lot of people who will probably be like, "Oh, you just won a championship in that little league," or like whatever. Like, I'm a champion, okay? And like when you have that experience of coming together with a group and working towards a common goal and then pulling it off over that extended amount of time, it actually like kind of changes your mindset a little bit. Like and then the people who you do it with, just off of having that experience, like you just become closer. And like all those guys, I'm pretty good friends with. And Jamel's one of them, man. Like after that season, we really kept in contact. Me, Jamel, and Josh that year, we all lived in this hotel that we were sponsored by. So we were all like right next to each other. Josh was on the bottom floor. Me and Jamel were on the top floor, and we were like right next to each other. So we would always talk, hang out. So yeah, whenever me and Jamel talk, we just talk like, homies.
Will it be a bit of trash talk when you guys face each other in Leicester, or is it is it like one kind of rivalry on the court and then like friends off the court, or is it like what's it going to be?
I don't know. I've never played against Jamel before. I don't know how that's going to be. I'll probably have some slick stuff to say to him. Try to get in his head, man. Jamel's tough, man. He's athletic. He's like, I think he's taller than me. He jumps over the moon, runs like the wind. He could shoot it. He could penetrate, finish at the rim. He's a team player. He plays really, really hard. That's going to be a tough matchup. And I think he plays the 4 spot. That's my spot. So we're going to match up.
Yeah, I think he's been a household name in the BBL now for quite a few years. And what was your fast forward a few years for you in your career in terms of from Australia, but then where were you when that coronavirus first hit? What team were you playing for?
Yeah, I was playing in Qatar. I was in Qatar, man. That was last year, so I started in Greece. Was there for 2 months. I got released from that team, and then I picked up an injury replacement contract back in Finland. Played for Salon Vilpis, which at the time was like the number 1 team. We were a pretty good team. I could have stayed there the entire time. They offered me to finish the season there, but then this team from Qatar reached out and they were paying way more money. And it was to the point where I was like, I kind of would be an idiot not to take this. So went to Qatar, man. And I get there and I see on the news, they're talking about this virus that's popping up in China. At the time, I had no idea we were going to be in a pandemic or even an epidemic. Like there's always little pockets of disease outbreaks in the world. There's, in my lifetime, there's been West Nile virus, there's been Ebola, there's been swine flu, there's been all this stuff. I never thought for a second that the world was going to stop because of this other virus that came out of China. But I guess you can call me a prophet to an extent.
Where were you when you kind of, like the whole shutdown thing? I saw the NBA had like shut down, and then that kind of set the tone, didn't it, for all the other leagues to shut down? I think BBL shut down like a few weeks after the NBA had shut down.
Yeah.
Do you remember where you were when you first like saw that news?
Yeah, I would have been just leaving Qatar. I think that was right on the time I had decided to leave Qatar. And the virus, at that point, it was starting to kind of come over into the Middle East, but it still wasn't really like a huge deal. And when I got off my flight, my phone was on fire. And I'm like, man, all these messages or whatever. And people were like, hey, man, I saw all that the coronavirus stuff in Qatar is going crazy. A bunch of people got sick, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, what? And so I literally had been like running away from it. And then right when I got to Australia, like a couple of days later, that's when the world stops. Everything is closing. Get back to your native country. Like I think Donald Trump at the time, who was unfortunately our president at the time, was like, yep, if you're an American citizen, get back here in 30 days or you're stuck where you're at. And then like I think a few days later, as a precaution, they shut down the league in Australia. Nobody had really gotten the virus. Like it was pretty COVID-free at the time, but I think they were just being safe about it. So yeah, I was in Australia when all that happened.
And then obviously like to kind of bring it into today, you started this season. Well, where did you start this season? I know you start with a different club, right?
Yeah, I was in Cyprus, back in Cyprus again. Similar kind of deal in terms of like taking an injury replacement. Somebody had gotten injured, playing for a different club. But yeah, and it was similar. Like the country was locked down, had a curfew, all that stuff. Obviously, some of our games went beyond like 8 p.m., so we had to have these special, like pretty much like permission slips to be out in the event that we had late practice or whatever, because the cops would literally drive around patrolling, like making sure you were actually inside. So we got pulled over a couple of times and had to show, yeah, we're good. We're just going home from practice.
Yeah, and then you get the call from, I guess you get the call from Coach K, or your agent gets the call from Coach K. How does that all kind of play out there?
So after that replacement when that guy got healthy again and I left, I went back to where I've been based at in Denmark. My agent called me, was like, hey, you just got into Denmark, it's all good, that's great. Go ahead and enjoy like the new year and all that stuff. But I've been talking with this team in the BBL in England. They're interested in bringing you out, blah, blah, blah. So we'll talk after the new year. And then like right after the new year was over, Andreas hit me up and, one thing led to another, and here I am.
Yeah, and here you are. And then it's full circle. Now, a fully fledged Bristol Flyers player, really settled into the team now, just over a month with the club, and that kind of brings the podcast kind of full circle, really, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Just to kind of like wrap things up. So we've gone through all the serious stuff. We've got like a little bit of a funny segment now to kind of end the podcast here.
All right.
You haven't had a chance to like experience some of the British culture and stuff like that at the moment. So we kind of want to bring some of the British culture to you on the podcast.
Okay.
So I don't know how familiar are you with some of the British slang and kind of the words. I don't know if Jamel had kind of told you any of the British slang whilst you were playing in Australia or anything.
I'm not super familiar. I mean, I've been told that there's some parallels and similarities between Australian culture and British culture, like slang or whatnot. So
we've got some words. So I've got some British slang here for you, and I'm going to say it to you, and you're going to tell me what you think it means, and then I'll tell you the answer. Okay. Mm-hmm. So first one we got is a Scouser. What do you think a Scouser is?
A Scouser.
Yeah.
Sheesh. Okay, that doesn't sound very flattering.
I promise you, it's not an insult. It's not an insult at all, actually.
Scouser, okay. A smooth talker.
No, it's not.
No?
It's not a smooth talker.
Not a smooth talker.
A Scouser is somebody from Liverpool. So if you're from Liverpool, you are a Scouser.
Okay, and you can't talk smooth apparently. All right.
The next one we got. This one's a bit of a Bristolian slang for you. This one is Gert Lush. What do you think Gert Lush means? So I'll say in a sentence. That's Gert Lush, and that's the Bristolian accent as well. So
that's like probably saying like, oh, that's rubbish. Like, oh, that's lame.
Oh, you got it the other way around. It means really nice. So in Bristol, especially, this is like a really Bristolian phrase, but people go like, oh, that's Gert Lush, that is, and that basically means like it's really, really nice. So
okay. That's
one for you. That's one for you to bring out in your vocab.
I'm failing right now. Okay.
You're 0 for 2 so far, but we're good. We've got more to come. What does minging mean? So like, oh, that's minging.
Oh, that's like that's cool. That's mad. Like that's dope. Yeah.
Well, it's the other way around. It means it's disgusting. Oh, that's minging. What is a numpty?
A numpty.
Yeah. So if you got called a numpty, or if you call someone a numpty,
that's got to be like idiot, yeah.
Yeah, that is. Okay,
yeah.
You got it.
Yeah.
Maybe don't call it in. Maybe don't call.
Don't call anybody a numpty. I might want to use that in the game, man. Get in somebody's head.
There you go. Last one we got here for you. What does on the raz mean?
On the raz.
Yeah.
That means like you're drinking.
That's it.
Yeah.
It means you're going out and having a few drinks.
I feel like I heard that one before. Okay. All right.
I mean, hopefully it won't be too much longer until. Obviously, you guys are athletes, so you don't do that anyway.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's not.
But off season, of
anywhere,
course.
Yeah. Off season, when we celebrate winning the championship, we'll be on the raz.
Absolutely. Here's to us winning the championship this year. Justin, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. Best of luck for the rest of the season. Hopefully we can get you back on towards the end of the season as well.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.